I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the MVP Show. My intention is that you listen to the stories of these MVP guests and are inspired to become an MVP and bring value to the world through your skills. If you have not checked it out already, I do a YouTube series called How to Become an MVP. The link is in the show notes. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Maryland in the United States. He currently works as a cloud solution architect at Applied Information Sciences, or AIS. He was first awarded as MVP in 2017. He's a co-author of a book, PowerShell for Office 365. And this is an interesting one. He is a recipient of the Antarctic Service Medal for the United States of America, was our outstanding service to Antarctica. Well, I'm going to unpack that one for sure. You can find links to his bio, his social media connections, etc., in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Prashant.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good to have you on. First of all, before we jump into getting into your background, tell us about Antarctica.
All right. So I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to work there. That was back in 2008 when I was studying at University of Maryland, College Park. And I was working there as a research assistant. And I got an opportunity to go there and conduct a research for 1.5 months. And because of my travel there, like Antarctica is a big continent and US government has a lot of stations there. And one of the biggest station is called McMurdo Station. And that station is on the side of New Zealand. So to travel there, first I had to go to New Zealand at Christchurch. There is a big facility there where they provide you the clothing. And from there, you take a special military flight. That is like an 8-hour flight from Christchurch to McMurdo Station. And the station has typically 1,000 people during the summertime. And Antarctic summer is same as Australia or New Zealand, at least in the McMurdo Station. Like that time is typically from November to February. And I got a chance to go there. Like I landed there in November, mid-November, and stayed there till almost end of December.
Wow, that is amazing. You're the first person, I've got to say. I know of people that are planning on traveling and doing like sailing down there or going via ship from Argentina, but the fact that you've been to New Zealand, where I'm from, and that you've done that, what was it like? What's the most memorable part of being there?
So the most memorable part was just being there and landed on Antarctic continent. If you know, like Antarctic continent is a really big continent and pretty much everywhere it's ice, and it is classified as a desert. Like we have two kinds of desert. One is the one where we have a lot of sand, like you find that in Arizona or in Middle East. And the second type is like you just have ice all over. So Antarctic continent falls into that. And my biggest or the most treasured memory from there is seeing the wild seals, like sleeping on the ice, like carefree, because seals don't have any natural predators in the Antarctic continent. They are kind of top predators there. So they kind of like, relax a bit. It's just like the kind of things you see in Africa, where, lions are the king of jungle. Same is like the leopard seal are like a king there. And you can hear them snoring from almost 1.5 miles. They snore very, very loudly. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the penguins there because to see penguins, you had to stay till January. But I did get a chance to see penguin in Christchurch in my return journey. Like there is a nice facility where you can see the penguins. It is, I think, near the Christchurch airport, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. And what a unique experience that you have. Before we unpack your IT experience and journey and ultimately becoming an MVP, tell us about food, family, and fun. How long have you lived where you lived? What tell us a bit about the things that you do when you're not doing IT stuff.
So I was born and raised in India, and I did my undergraduate or bachelor's degree in India in electronics engineering. And after that, I worked for a couple of years in India for IBM and for HSBC Bank. And then always wanted to study in USA. And in 2007, I came to United States to do the master's in computer engineering. And till that time, most of my experience or work has been with IBM's mainframe system or with low-level programming using device drivers and C++. And after I graduated in 2009, I just appeared for, and by the way, that time it was like a recession was going on in the United States. And I was fortunate enough to get a job in a firm called Porter Solutions. And they were known for doing a lot of SharePoint work. And that was the first interaction with SharePoint, like back in 2009. And then I worked there for almost 11 years. And while working there, I got married. My wife is also from India. I got married in 2012. We had a kid in 2018. He is like 4 years old. That's why I was making sure my door is locked because he's inside the house, and I want to make sure, we can talk uninterruptedly. In terms of the food, I like variety of the foods, but my personal favorite non-Indian food is Mexican food. I like Mexican food a lot because they have a lot of varieties of cheese and vegetables, and plus the tortilla that you can have, and I really like that.
Nice, nice. What about your favorite Indian food?
My favorite Indian food is it's a homemade food, and you'll be surprised. It's just like lentil dal and some bread with it, or we call it chapati. I really like that.
Oh wow, so interesting, and so interesting your experience coming from India to the US and the companies you work for. And yeah, I had no idea that you work for IBM, who I currently work for. Um, yeah, so very interesting. Tell me about getting into SharePoint and particularly the transition over the last few years from SharePoint into things like the Power Platform and particularly Power Apps and Power Automate and things like that. How have things changed in what you've observed over that time?
Okay. So when I started working with SharePoint, it was back in 2009. And my first version of SharePoint at that time was 2007 or MOS that I used to call. And then I started working on SharePoint 2010. Until that time, a lot of enterprises or a lot of companies were looking at SharePoint as a kind of silver bullet that will solve all our organization problems. Like if someone has to build anything, whether it's a public facing website or internal application, everyone is to think, okay, let's use SharePoint and see if we can do that with SharePoint. Or let's make SharePoint not look like a SharePoint, but still use like its behind the scene capabilities. And that sort of kind of started changing ever since Microsoft made a push to SharePoint Online or Office 365 that used to call that time. It was like around 2014, 2015. We started getting some customers who were more interested in exploring the cloud. And then came the year 2018, 2019, where Microsoft had to make a decision what to do with all these info platforms and old SharePoint designer workflows. And that sort of time they made announcement about, like, I think it was 2016, they made announcement about Power Apps and Power Automate. And I started slowly exploring that, and then started getting a lot of engagements where clients were interested. Okay, we are moving to the cloud, but while moving to the cloud, we want to make sure we use the latest and greatest technology for forms and workflows. And during that time, I also started working with some of the ISVs because some of the capabilities with Power Platform were not there yet, and there was a big gap. And a couple of ISVs, like big known ISVs, they had a good products, compelling product at that time.
So give us some examples of those ISVs.
like Nintex and K2. Now they both have joined the forces, but Nintex and K2s, they had a really good solution that time because the alternatives such as Power Platform was not matured that enough during that time.
So that's interesting that you brought up both K2 and Nintex. Tell us, what you know now. Is there the demand for Nintex and K2 like there used to be 5 years ago?
I don't think so, and that's a reason that you say if like I worked on both K2 and Nintex, those were like great products for their time. But if you look at their marketing messaging now or the kind of focus they are shifting away from their traditional forms and workflow business and going more into the other areas like the RPA or business process management and other areas of that because they know it's going to be tough for them to compete with Microsoft Power Platform. So they kind of know, and then that's why they're starting venturing into other areas.
So, you talk about RPA then as part of their venture path, but of course Microsoft is covering RPA solidly. But then you did talk about BPM as well, business process management. Do you see there's a gap in what we have with Flow and Power Automate for a BPM technology?
Definitely, there is a gap because if you look at Flow and if you look at, let's say, you can look at Power Automate, the entire suite, the cloud flows as well as desktop flows, those are built for mostly backend automation. But if you look at like a holistic business process management system, which you can use to, let's say, not only create the backend automation, but you create, let's say, diagrams like visuals, or you can, which can help you to understand, okay, what's going on where. I think those are capabilities still not there yet. Maybe eventually Microsoft will add those. But I don't think like right now, if you look at the roadmap, most of the focus is on getting the automation out of the door, like adding more and more capabilities where you use Power Automate as a single product and it doesn't matter where your data lives. You can just pretty much connect that to all the commonly used third-party products or Microsoft ecosystem, or you can also connect to your legacy on-premise system as well via custom connectors. So that story is really well back. I think maybe in a couple of years we'll see more and more focus on business process management side of it.
Interesting. Have you looked at Agile XRM?
Not yet.
You haven't looked at that. So that's an ISV solution I came across about 10 years ago, and that was doing the BPM, but totally built on the Dataverse. And of course, pre-Dataverse, it was built on Microsoft's technology prior to that. But yeah, very interesting. Comes out of Spain and seen it used in a lot of, like in financial institutions that want a BPM tool to work with Power Automate as part of that story, and they have that whole visualize elements that you talked about. So interesting there, as in you're the first person I've talked to and had a conversation about K2 and Nintex. And, I've seen their journey because, my career in Dynamics, they were there and they're very strong in that SharePoint. And I wondered what was happening now, being that Microsoft has built so much of that functionality into the platform. Very interesting. Tell me about what do you, when you look at the future, where do you see things going from the Microsoft Power Platform perspective? Maybe based on your observations, where do you see things going? What do you see the opportunity is for other people? Like if they were going to switch careers, get into the space, what advice would you give them?
So, okay, I will answer the first question, which is where things are going. I think you will see more and more push from Microsoft and more offerings where how you can connect Microsoft 3 public clouds, let's say Power Platform, Microsoft 365, and Azure, and build enterprise application. Like if you see some of the recent announcement regarding licensing as well, they're trying to combine the Azure licensing with Power Platform so that you as a company doesn't have to worry about, okay, whether it's Power Platform or Microsoft 365 or Azure. You just have to focus on, okay, what's the business problem I have and how I can solve using all the stacks that are available to me in the Microsoft ecosystem. I think future is like more or less the things are going there, but it will take some time. But I think the work has already been started on that. Now, another trend that I'm seeing a lot these days is the fusion development, where still now, like you always see that, okay, either you have a group of developers who are building a really good application, or you have a group of citizen developers or power users who are building a really sophisticated enterprise application. But as things getting complicated, you'll say there is a lot of push where, okay, how can bring these two teams together? And instead of these two teams fighting together, how about we, collaborate together and build a really sophisticated application where citizen developers can focus more on using something like Power Platform, and then pro developers can then integrate Power Platform using some Azure services, and build really meaningful applications. Like we are seeing a lot interest in that one. In terms of giving someone the advice, I will say is like, if someone is starting new today, I will mostly ask them, okay, where you would like to work, whether you would like to work in a product development space, or whether you would like to work in, let's say, more in ISVs, or for, let's say, system integrators, or more like enterprise space. If the answer is first, like they want to focus more on the product development, then I will recommend them, okay, maybe then depending on what your role is, whether you would like to be a developer or product manager, you can decide. For a developer, then you have to go to pick any programming language of your choice and just master that. But if someone says, no, I want to focus more on the enterprise space, then I will say, like, okay, look at the SaaS products, because if you see in the industry trend, SaaS is kind of where most of the CIOs or CTOs are leaning towards. So pick any SaaS product of your choice. It can be Microsoft 365 or Power Platform, and just start building your expertise in that. And then you'll find more and more opportunities aligning with your skills there.
Yeah, I like it. This is very cool. Tell us, as we go to wrap up, your MVP journey. How did that come about for you, and what has the impact been for you in becoming an MVP?
I have always been a community person. When I was studying engineering in India, we used to organize a lot of community events within the college itself, college campus itself. Like we used to invite industry leaders for the guest lectures. We used to organize some code camps. And then I came to US, and I kind of was away from the community for almost ever since I came to US, because I was studying, and I was also working as a research assistant. Like it was very hard for me to find the spare time. But in 2012, my company actually sponsored a SharePoint Saturday. They work on a similar lines, let's say, as SQL Saturdays or other Saturday events we have. And I was at a booth, and I was also helping the organizers with running the event. And I kind of really like that concept where, you just come there and share whatever you know. And the audience used to be mostly friendly audience. And those events used to be free events. You just come in there, eat free pizza, hang out with people and learn some cool stuff. And then after that, I started contributing to SharePoint Saturdays. I started speaking. I also started organizing the events. I started the user group. So I got my first MVP award in 2017. And when I started doing my community activities, a lot of people noticed me. And I got nominated by, I think, roughly 2 or 3 people that time. And during that time, the MVPs used to get awarded every quarter. So I think I missed one quarter. So I got nominated somewhere in October, but already the deadline for the January timeframe already passed. So I got awarded in April timeframe, April 2017. And then initially, my category was Office 365 apps and services, especially SharePoint. And then I got really interested in Microsoft Applied AI space, started doing a lot of work in that space, both in the company as also started evangelizing that a lot via user groups, via conference talks. And in 2019, I changed my category to AI. And till now, I'm still an AI MVP. But apart from that, this year, I got additional category as a business application MVP as well. In terms of AI, like in terms of MVP journey, I still organize a lot of user group meetings. Like we have a very strong community in Washington, DC area, where I'm from. And before the pandemic, most of the user group meetings and conferences we used to organize used to be in-person conference. But ever since the pandemic has started, everything is virtual now. We're still looking to host our first in-person conference or community conference, I think early next year. The venue we typically use is not available right now. Otherwise, we would have hosted in this quarter itself. And in terms of biggest impact for me as an MVP is the networking. Like I have made a lot of friends. I have met a lot of really interesting people. I learned a lot from the fellow MVPs and other people who are not MVP but contributing a lot in the community. And also, being an MVP gives you the direct access to the Microsoft product group, which is very, very valuable. Especially now we live in a time where the technology changes like pretty much every week or every month, and sometimes there is not much information out there in the internet because the technology is so new, and then you have to rely on Microsoft product group for the direction or just to find out what's the optimum solution you can take if this is a scenario for you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you like the show and want to be a supporter, check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Thanks again, and see you next time.